like to welcome everybody to the June 8th, 2020 Board of Education regular meeting. Brendan, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. King?
Here.
Ms. Reese?
Present.
Ms. Sebastian?
Here.
Mr. Elam? Here. Ms. Mansfield?
Here.
All right, next, please join us in a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, do we have any additions to the agenda tonight? All right, hearing none, do we have any review of old business? All right, next up would be administrative reports. Turn it over to Mr. Firks.
First on the agenda this evening would be the elementary building, elementary principal Ms. Petty, and her updates for the board this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Firks. I just have a couple brief items just to review along with Mrs. Roll. First of all, just to update the board and the public, Wednesday, May 27th, we had our elementary student send-off parade. That was the first time we've ever done something of that nature, and we felt like it was very, very successful. We were able to hit every student close to where they live or exactly where they're living. We sent out all 14 buses, and most of those had at least 2 to 3 staff cars behind each of them. And so it was quite, I would say, exciting to see the kids again, even if it was from a distance. So, and they were excited to see us. As you see, I shared a couple pictures with board members' report in regards to some of the things the kids were holding up with signs and all kinds of different things. So it was a great event. The staff enjoyed it, and I believe the students and the parents did as well. So that was very successful. Mrs. Roll is going to update us on the kindergarten screening and give us a few updates on that.
So we originally scheduled kindergarten screening for May, which we were obviously unable to do because of schools being shut down. So we have now scheduled kindergarten screening for August 5th and 6th. Utilizing final forms, we sent a sign-up email through Sign Up Genius out to all of our parents on May 31st. I would say we've got about 35 to 40 parents who have signed up for a slot so far. What that will look like is all 5 kindergarten teachers will be here both days, as well as doing hearing and vision screening and speech screening. That's our kind of plan right now, is to follow through as we usually do. Parents were notified in that email to sign up that we will email them at a later date closer to the event with specifics on the location and what to expect when they get there. We're really unsure of what any safety precautions may be required due to COVID-19, so we are hesitant to put anything specific out at this time. We would like to utilize the time between now and then to see what changes may occur. So we will notify parents of what to expect as the event approaches. We also plan to collect all registration documents to finalize registration. So we were able to get, we're hoping, an accurate count of students through final forms, but we still have to collect birth certificates, proof of residency, all of those documents that go along with it. So we're looking to put kindergarten screening in the middle school gym so that the students and teachers will be right there close to the office so that parents can very easily go back and forth between the gym with their child, but also work with Ms. Allen to finalize registration. Every year, the PTO provides the kindergarten with a welcome t-shirt, usually at our kindergarten orientation. So the PTO plans to provide the kindergarten t-shirts at the time of finalizing registration. So Ms. Allen will get those out. So a big thank you to the PTO for that. Our current expected enrollment for kindergarten right now is about 118. This does include 2 students that are going to be retained this year, and 3 students that we are aware of but have not formally even done the online process as Yes.
Moving on to just some thank yous as we wrap up the school year. Obviously, there's not as many events going on, so we chose to focus some of our attention on some gratitude. First of all, thank you to our PTO group. Of course, they're always a group that goes above and beyond for our students and our staff and families. They did provide all of the Bethel staff a thank you gift card from Olive Garden in place of the annual staff luncheon that they typically provide. And they also obviously have some money left over because we typically do an end of the year thing for students and families as well. So they chose to show their gratitude to the staff and all the extra work that went into providing, sound education for kids during the COVID-19. They also showed up when we had our our parent pick up of student items, and they handed out to the elementary students a little goodie bag, and it had a free book inside of it. There's some good feedback even on the Facebook page. Some of these kids have already read their book. So just wanted to make sure to thank them for all of their additional hard work and for making that a great way to wrap up the summer for everyone. Some additional words of praise, I have to say, goes out to our elementary parents. The support that they provided, the kids, when you're an elementary level, you can't always do things independently. You're going to be dependent upon your parents to help you. And we know that the success of all of our students heavily was dependent upon our parents. So we want to extend a sincere thank you to all of our elementary parents. Also to our elementary staff, when you're learning something brand new, it's quite a challenge. And the learning curve was quite large for many of us, including myself. I feel like they truly went above and beyond. They made personal contact with families and students, as well as Mrs. Roll and myself made some contacts. And just, continue to grow and push themselves, accept more responsibility, and they stayed focused on learning. So I just wanted to extend a thank you to our staff publicly as well for all their hard work. And that is really all we have to share this evening from the elementary level, unless you have any questions.
I have one
Yes.
question, actually. Sorry. The 118 expected plus another 3, is that going to be 5 classrooms of kids again? Okay. That was it.
Anything else? Okay. All right. Thank you for your update. Appreciate it. Up next on the agenda would be middle school principal, Mr. Tim Ziegler.
It's good to see 2 of our very soon to be hired teachers for next year. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to ask them to just share with the board a little bit about yourself. You don't have to speak very long. But new 6th grade language arts teacher, Colette Clayton.
Hi, I am the new 6th grade language arts teacher. I'm originally from Dayton, and I've been teaching for some years now, all language arts. My husband and I raised 5 children, and excited to be coming up here to Bethel. Looking forward to it. Thank you. I recognize a couple, yeah, and they have a long history.
That gentleman was in my 7th grade class.
Recognize a couple
Small
faces, of
world.
course. Great wisdom. I was like, I didn't remember why, and all of a sudden it's clicking now, so.
Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
And I don't know if it was an omen or our good fortune, but if there's any future of this virtual learning, we've got a person that's going to help guide us through that middle school. Neil Norman. Neil, tell me.
My name's Neil Norman. I've lived in Miami County my whole life, graduated from Miami East High School, so really familiar with the area. I spent the last 9 years teaching online for a high virtual academy. So that's kind of an experience. It's making a switch coming into the classroom, so we're really looking forward to that. We're looking to have contact with people because I'm sure you guys, everybody found out it's hard to teach without that human contact. So really looking forward to it. Really cool coming to Bethel. I'm really excited to do this. I'm looking forward to teaching to everybody. Thank you.
As I mentioned on the board update, there was some academics going on while we were out. Power of the Pen did a virtual competition. We had sent 4 8th graders and 5 7th graders to the regionals. And our 1 8th grader, Jackie Harris, came in 3rd place out of all the 8th graders. And our whole 7th grade team placed 3rd overall, with Victoria Layton taking 10th and Sean Austin Phipps won the individual contest. So congratulations to all those individuals. And Miss Seaback, the advisor. As I mentioned about scheduling, the 3 classes we offer for high school credit, that's 4 classes, health and PE, art 1, and Spanish, are all full. All were closed. We had so many asked that I had to put some parameters on as far as how you get into Spanish based it on English grades. It has since, after calling around and having them call me back, some have ended up dropping some. It has opened up a few slots and gotten them to take some of our new electives that we have that we're offering for next year. Publications, Leadership 101, and Global Music Appreciation are the 3 brand new classes. But our other electives have been helped by the kids needing to choose more than just one of those 3 for high school credit. And the virtual learning, my update is just, I think we've all learned a great deal. None of us were actually ready to do that. I also want to compliment all the staff and students for making it as successful as it was, even though there were some pitfalls. We learned a number of things that if there's some future in us having to do this again, I think there's some professional development that our staff is even looking forward to doing prior to it happening. I think some common communication at each grade level is very important. Shouldn't be left to each individual teacher. We need to do it by grade level. We need to have some common expectations. I think that discussion of it being graded or non-graded, we did establish very early, it wasn't going to be graded, it was for effort. But some teachers, because some kids were giving more effort than others, wanted to reward them, so they started grading things and showing it. Then parents became concerned, well, this teacher's grading it, but this teacher's not grading it. So there's some things there that we could straighten up and not leave folks unaware of what was going on. So, and a better use of Schoology. Schoology is a great platform. We just don't know how to use all the aspects of it yet. And that's my update for the week.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ziegler. Mr. Swope, are any questions?
Dr. Norman, a Schoology expert.
Yeah, we use Schoology.
Sorry about that. We got our own system we use, because through the K-12, like online K-12 system, so we use that. I could probably learn anything.
Any other questions for Mr. Ziegler? High school principal, Mr. Barrett Swope.
Just a few things here. As we finished up the year in the high school, of course, graduation was different this year, but it was successful. We had 108 students in the class of 2020, and of the 108, 101 chose to participate in the virtual graduation. So we held 101 individual graduation ceremonies for those students. Then as it was shown, the initial viewing, there was almost 200 people watching, of course, multiple people around one computer, I'm sure. But then since then, I just looked this past week and there was over 1,000 views of graduation. So that was good to see there. Then the senior caravan parade, just some thank yous to Gail Rhodes and Miss Kathy for driving the buses, the Miami County Sheriff's Office for their assistance and support there. And then shout out to the hundreds of community members that cheered and waved as the seniors went past. We then had on May 28th, a day set aside where students could return to school and drop off their textbooks and Chromebooks and clean out their personal belongings from their lockers. That went very smoothly, very successful. Since then, we've had a few trickle in, returning things, but we have accounted for all the textbooks and Chromebooks, and there's just a few that were not turned in yet, and so those students would be, of course, charged fees for those. Grade cards are mailed home on Tuesday, June 2nd. We are working on the last few student schedules for next school year. Hoping to mail out those schedules later this week. And then we're trying to set up some days in August that if students need to change their schedules for whatever reason, mainly for college credit plus opportunities or some other educational options they may have, we'll have some time set aside for them to change schedules before the first day of school. Then summer school, our students usually attend summer school at Wayne High School, but we found out just a week or two before last day of school that they were not going to allow students from outside their district to attend this year. So we were able to find an alternative with the county. It's Odyssey Edgenuity, it's the same company. And Bethel teachers are in support of that. There's a science teacher, an English teacher, a math teacher, and I'm actually trying to get another math teacher because we have a lot of students who have signed up for this summer school for some math courses in order to pass those classes and earn their credits. Students are charged a fee, and that'll help offset the cost of the teachers. So in talking with the guidance counselors, we would like to maybe next summer offer our own in-house summer school rather than have kids go someplace else. But we're still in the early stages of discussing some of that. That's all the update I have for June. Yeah, the valedictorian, salutatorian proposal that the Committee of Teachers and Counselors and I had come up with, I had emailed it to you all. And really, that's the only thing that's needed to then get the high school student handbook approved, which we need to get done soon so we can get it to the printer if we want to include it in the agenda. If we don't want to include it in the agenda, then we don't necessarily need to have that done today or anything. But ideally, it would be good to have to the printer to get included in the agendas. Not sure if there are any questions or anything on that.
I found it thought-provoking and very interesting. And I went into it negatively. By the time I read it, I was split. But there were a lot of positives.
I agree. There are a lot of positives in it too. I mean, it's never going to be a perfect system. That's just the reality. I think there's always going to be kids who want to take a lot of college credit plus classes, and I think that, we're trying to have that happy medium by limiting it to giving the bump to the 4 classes only, and I can see that that's trying to be a compromise to, satisfying those who don't want our valedictorian to end up always being someone who's maybe off campus over their last few years. You have a lot of people who take classes that aren't full classes and they still get the bump and things like that. So, I mean, I see that, but I know that the trend in education is that we're having a lot of more students that get their associate's degree by the time they graduate high school because they can. And I don't necessarily feel that it's appropriate to penalize those students either. So they're feeling like they can't pursue the utmost of their education because they still want to be valedictorians, so now they're torn to make a choice as well. So, it's just a difficult decision no matter how we look at it. It just really is.
I especially like that there would be a Bethel student that would be valedictorian as well. as opposed to somebody who's never set foot in the building.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice compromise.
Yes.
Anyway, I mean, it's still, there's still core class restriction is still there, though, you know, so.
Yeah, I had some questions I was going to talk to Barrett on Wednesday regarding. It on first glance, when I went through it, had a lot of positives in it, but I'd still like to sit down with both policies and make sure I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, those are all great points, and thank you, Lori, for that. Do we need to look at possibly establishing a special meeting in regards to the high school handbook, or will it be too long? Or at the next work session, will that be an adequate amount of time, or will that be too long to exceed our capability to approve it, to allow for it to be in place to the printers in time?
When did you say, July?
13th.
6th, no, well, then we have a work
Work
session.
session on the 7th.
I know last year, I'm
Yeah,
using the
so-
same company to do the agenda again this year because it's cheaper. And they wanted it, I think, June 25th. Like I said, if it's not in the agenda, then you can have copies, photocopies available. It's on the school website. I can email it to each kid, each student.
Well, can you print everything but the Val-Sal policy?
And then just have some sort of asterisk that says,
See the website.
see the website or see the office details. If that's the case, then that's fine.
I mean, that's the only thing that's at least in my opinion, was holding it up. And like I said, because it is a pretty major change, I think we should really just take a couple days or weeks and read through it and make sure we haven't missed anything.
That's fine with me, if you all approve the handbook minus the Val-Sal part of it.
So how long can we continue to do Zoom meetings? Are we,
As far as I'm aware, we have not been given any guidance as far as you could traditionally have. I mean, you could have a regular meeting if you wanted. We don't have to do a Zoom meeting.
so what about having a special meeting?
Okay.
I mean, I don't think it'd be a big burden for one issue. And we could do it by the June 25th or 23rd, whatever the date is you need it. Lori, would that be okay if we did, to hit his drop dead date?
Yeah, as long as it's okay with everybody else to have another meeting. I mean, I hate to call a special meeting for one agenda item, but
I'll have another thing. Approval of the contract. Yeah.
So you can find your plan first, I'm not sure. You never know with coronavirus and COVID-19, they may be on a totally different.
I'll check tomorrow.
Right now.
I'll check tomorrow and find out what the drop dead date is.
Their volume may be totally different this year.
What's being said is unintelligible on our side. I can't understand what you were saying.
Sorry, I just said if he could just check with the printer for a confirmed date, just given COVID-19, that the printer's dates and projects may be totally different this year, so we don't know for sure.
Could you hear that, Jacob?
I heard most of it, but I'm not exactly sure the ending part.
I'm gonna essentially check with the printing company tomorrow to find out the drop dead date, when he has to submit the PDF file for printing purposes to get it back in time for the start of school. And then once we have that information, we will schedule a special board meeting to consider this request. We'll potentially maybe have an additional item on there as well in regards to the consideration for approval of ELA curriculum adoption for next school year as well. And any other items that pop up.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
But I guess the question for Mr. Swope would be, do you want to go ahead and proceed with printing it? Or do you want to wait? I guess it depends on what they say tomorrow.
I'll get hold of them tomorrow and.
But then if you don't approve the handbook tonight, then you can't print it until it gets approved.
So I almost would, what Lori said, approve it without that section. And it,
Were there any other concerns in the handbook besides the vow sal?
Not on my part.
That was all I was waiting on from Jacob.
Okay. Lori?
No, to my knowledge, it was just the Valsal.
I kind of hate not having it in the handbook if we could get it in there though. So maybe we can go ahead and approve it, and then if you find out the date is within a couple of weeks, and if we still have a little time, then maybe we could still have the special meeting and get it in the book.
Okay,
Well, then you want to approve it.
correct.
Did the existing Valsal policy, I can't remember what was in the handbook, is it, because it's going to have to be twofold, right? You're going to have to include current, excuse me, for current students, and then for, I guess, the class of 2024 forward.
Yes, that's correct.
So, again, I think I don't know, my preference would be to wait until to get us is the policy you gave us, the handbook, inclusive of all that, Barrett?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So I guess before we vote on it, I guess we need to see a complete copy with the changes in. But like I said, that's why I think we should omit it, because we need to see the whole thing. At least, or we could call a special meeting, but I think the safest thing is just to omit it.
Are you asking, Lori, if our copy had like graduation prior to 2024, follow this rule, and then 2024 after, follow this?
Correct.
Because I don't think that we had that.
Well, and it's not even, I don't even think it's standardized with the current student handbook isn't standardized with the current policy, because anatomy and physiology had weight for the Valsal. So there's that too, and that issue was never resolved. It was just kind of like, oh, well, there was no follow-up there, and that concerns me, because in the course of study it said one thing, and in the student handbook of the past years it said something else.
So
Right. And that's a great point, Lori. That's why we think that we have the opportunity to find the finalized date. Then we can establish a special meeting with regards to the entire handbook. If we cannot meet those objectives, then we would approve a portion of the handbook and a current Valsal policy, and that could be separated if we need more time.
Okay, because the whole reason when we talked about this a couple months ago was the goal was to bring this to a work session so we could discuss it, and then at the next meeting we would approve it. And so we're kind of out of order here, but it is what it is. Agreed.
And I'll just keep the option on the table, maybe to consider having refer to online, just because it's going to get kind of lengthy, I think, by the time we have all of the classes available for different grades and years of graduation and stuff. It may just be an interim plan to refer to everyone to online until 2024, when it's one plan for everybody. Just a thought. I mean,
Yeah, I like that idea.
So how about tomorrow, you make a couple phone calls, or one phone call, see when that drop date is, and then we will schedule a special meeting according to what you give us as far as dates and when things need to be submitted on your end. So if they give us a week, then we'll have to have it in a week. Okay. Does that work for everyone?
Yes, and Justin, if we could also maybe schedule that special meeting is the beginning portion would be a discussion phase and then a voting phase. That way, if we have other topics to discuss around the Pacific Handbook, then we'd be able to work through those and possibly approve an amended handbook if needed, or the handbook presented.
Okay. I'm fine with that if the collective group is okay with voting in a work session, but we know going in it'll be for that, so. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Swope?
I'd just like to thank he and his staff for all the work with graduation. I thought both the ceremony and the parade went extremely well. And, you know, the videographer, the videoing went really well by Mr. Oldegeist. I think that was pretty unique to Bethel. I've watched a couple other high school graduations where the sound was not very good. And all I want to say is kudos. The parade was great, and great job to everyone.
Yeah, I echo Lori's comments and would say that possibly the senior parade is something that we continue in years to come. All right, so hearing no further comments, let's go ahead and move on to section 5, which would be superintendent. Mr. Firks, items requesting, I'm sorry, a superintendent's report. Mr. Firks.
Couple of items for this evening. We have two individuals here, or one's with us this evening, and then one is channeling in through Zoom. That will be new personnel to the district. One of our individuals will be in a new position, create a position to the district, our communications director, and then we'll also have a school nurse who's logging in via Zoom. Mrs. Kemper, can you hear me on Zoom?
Yes, I can.
All right, wonderful. Mrs. Heather Kemper is joining us as our new school nurse. She'll be taking over for the 2020-2021 school year. Kind of give you a chance just to tell the board and the members that are here this evening, just a few seconds, take some time to kind of share a little bit of your background and experiences in the nursing field, and tell them a little about yourself.
Okay. I'm Heather Kemper. I have a son, Maddox Kemper, who will be in 4th grade next year. So I've been an ICU nurse for a little over 10 years now. I graduated from Miami University of Ohio and then got my bachelor's degree at Ohio University. So having been working at Grandview ICU for over 10 years, just kind of looking for something different. I'm excited for the new challenge to be there with kids in the school. So very looking forward to meeting you all and getting started.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you logging in this evening. We're looking forward to the start of the 2020-2021 school year. Mrs. Roll and Ms. Petty are here this evening as well. They were part of the interview process. You guys have anything included in that at all?
Welcome. We're excited to have you. Yeah. I think it's going to be a great fit for Mrs. Moore working together. They both bring different strengths, so I think it's going to be a great team.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for being here this evening. You're more than welcome to stay and watch the rest of the meeting, or you can log off and you will not offend us.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. See you soon.
I hope to see you all soon.
We also have in the audience tonight our communications director, Mrs. Holly Mutulu, who is joining us. Excited to have Holly here this evening. She has over 25 years experience doing a lot of different things, and I think she's going to bring a unique skill set and quality to our district in a position that we've never had, but I feel like we're in the right position now to add with new families coming in, expansion, growth, building projects on the horizon, diversity coming into the district, and trying to embrace all the great things that are Bethel of the past and then build for a newer Bethel. So take a few minutes to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself as well.
Okay, well, thank you for having me tonight. And my name is Holly Mutlu. I am, like Mr. Brooks said, I have over 25 years of experience in public relations and So, but I'm really excited as a community member of Bethel. I'm very proud of our community, and I can't wait to show off the great things that are happening here, to streamline some things and really improve the two-way conversation. And so I'm really excited about that. We've been here for 5 years, so I have a great insight as far as different aspects of Bethel. And like I said, I'm just super excited to be able to utilize my giftings and talents to brag on my own community. So thank you, guys.
All right, well, we're very excited to have all you folks here with us this evening, logging in or in the crowd. So, as I said, welcome to Bethel. We're excited about what the future brings. Glad to have you part of our school family. Thank you for being here. And you're more than welcome to exit stage right if you so choose. So, yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome to you all. Thank you.
Going to switch gears. The main part, just a brief couple of updates that won't take long at all, just to kind of give you a heads up on some of the items that are taking place or have wrapped up recently within the district. Our facilities project number one that we were working on for the last month or so had to do with the security film. That project has been finalized. All of the windows and doors have been caulked and sealed. That is dried as well. So we'll probably end up doing some sort of a walkthrough with essential personnel here soon to kind of indicate or let them know where all of it's located, because that glass does take a little bit of different cleaning product on it to maintain the security film. Custodial staff all knows, but I think it'll be important to share not only with building administrators, but also building secretaries and people that frequently work in the offices, kind of where that film is located and kind of what they can expect as far as trying to maintain the longevity of that product. Second project had to do with some cleanup that's going on in the middle school. We'll have that take place in one of our classrooms late in June. We'll also be getting new carpeting in Mr. Purvis and Mrs. Peck's shared room here start of July. Once that project takes place, we've also had the completion of Mrs. Randall's room is finished as well. I think it looks nice. So much better than what it was previously. So that is finished. Summer custodial crew has started today. They started first and foremost in the upper levels of the elementary because of how hot it gets up there. So they want to try and knock that out now before the dog days of August hit us. And they were able to get, I think, 5 or 6 of the classrooms carpeted clean today. So they were able to move along. Now they're still working on deep cleaning of all the classrooms, but to get 5 or 6 classrooms carpets cleaned, and then obviously they have fans blowing up there to kind of dry, and the air conditioning units are running to try to speed up that process as much as possible. But we had a good crew on campus. We also had some of our summer student workers started today on the outside and the inside, working with Mr. Goins, our new assistant maintenance director. They were able to get a couple of the dead trees right behind the new high school. Some of those pine trees that have died the last few years, they were able to get a couple of those cut down. So there's a few of those that are going to need to be pulled out of the ground, just because if you drive back there, you'll see them. So just for whatever reason, they didn't take, or they're 5, 6 years old and they just have ran their course of life. So a lot of work going on today. It's good to see a lot of people around the building, and it'll be a busy next couple of months to get ready for the start of the school year. And then finally, I also have Mr. Jay Borchers joining us this evening. Mr. Borchers, can you hear me?
Yep.
Jay is going to give a short presentation this evening on some curriculum updates that the district has been involved in for probably the last couple of years, right? But a lot of the work's kind of coming to a head this year as far as with the language arts adoption. It's been more than just this year, I'm sure. It's been going on for a while, but they've done a lot of work with the curriculum committee, with the building principals, and they are really trying to not only continue to upgrade our curriculum, but streamline the process and get everybody on the same page as far as textbook adoptions, different programming to build phonics, and also some professional development training in Haggerty, which Jay is going to talk about this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Borchers. The floor is yours.
Well, good evening, everyone. Mr. Ferk said short, so I guess I'll have to be short. That's not really my style. I first wanted to say, Mr. Swope had mentioned summer school, and that has worked out pretty well. Odyssey is an online platform that we're using. Obviously, it's worked out to have it available, and the county uses it during the school year as a resource, but during the summer, it's not used, so we're able to use it for free. So we are charging because we have teachers that are overseeing that, but all the cost goes straight into our teachers, and the platform actually worked out pretty well. So not on my presentation, but just wanted to point that out. I don't know who's controlling the computer. Could you press slideshow and presentation or present, just so it shows up bigger? This is I have lack of control, you know. So we have been working hard over the last really year and a half, and the seeds were planted even before that. The literacy leadership team was put together. It has representation across the school district and have put in a lot of hours, 5 days of professional development from the state support team outside of school. It takes a lot of planning for in the classroom for subs, and also we have just done a lot of thinking and reading and discussing, and a lot of great conversations. So I wanted to thank every member of that team. It has been a pleasure to work with them, and we'll continue our work because as we go, we still have work to do in terms of what I'm going to present tonight is more tier 1 or all students. And what we can do for all students. But as we work and we see that students are struggling or need more challenges, we have to start to talk about what we do for those students and what process we take. So thank you to all of those committee members. Next slide. So just wanted to go through a decision process. So what I'm presenting tonight is a curriculum adoption of a few different items. And we have had the previous curriculum for 6 years. And so it was up for adoption for this upcoming school year. Like I said, we've been going through a long process of trying to figure out what was the best practice through research and evidence, and try to not start with a whole bunch of curriculums and then narrow them down, but instead start with what we want to accomplish. So what are we trying to do for our students? What do we want them to walk out of Bethel? What kind of students do we want in the literacy realm? And as you know, everything else builds on top of literacy. So it's a really important key component. We got a lot of staff feedback through the process. And overall, we worked as the literacy planning team to figure out what would best meet our students' needs at Bethel. Next slide. Just to go over one small piece of research that gives a really quick snapshot of reading. Reading starts at a decoding level, and you also have a language comprehension piece that comes in, and those two together make a product of reading comprehension. Now that sounds pretty simple, but what we find is some students really struggle in the decoding, but they have a lot of language and they still struggle with reading, or vice versa. Students may really struggle with with language comprehension, vocabulary, but they really have the word reading, and they can read words but not have a clue what they're reading. And so our goal is to build both of these pieces to have a final product of great readers and writers. Next slide. So what we're starting out doing is we found through our review of what we are currently doing that we have strong phonics instruction throughout our elementary, but it was all over the place in terms of what phonics program was used. Different grade levels were using different programs, and that could be confusing for students because they might hear things said a different way. We just want consistency for our students so they have a nice streamlined approach. In terms of phonemic awareness, which is all verbal sounds and the sounds you build your reading upon, we didn't do a ton of instruction there. And that's pretty common if you look across the state. Any district I'm in, it was a work in progress. It was not something we were very focused on. So to start, we have Haggerty phonemic awareness. It's 10 minutes a day in the kindergarten and first grade classrooms. The teachers have a manual, the kids do it all verbally. And it's basically rhyming sounds, trying to help kids hear the language correctly. So that is one piece. Teachers have already had training on that earlier in April. and we're good to go there. It's a very cost-effective program in low time, but with hopefully great results. And then building up, the next step from phonemic awareness is phonics. Like I said, our instruction within phonics had some phonics dance, some foundations, some used Wonders for their phonics, and Wonders was our kind of overall reading program previously. Foundations is a multisensory approach to phonics that is consistent from K to 2, and we're looking at it for our whole classroom instruction. Like I said, it has been used some in Bethel, and some people who have had students go through the younger grades maybe remember pieces of foundations, but we had some materials on hand. So what we did is we figured out what we needed, and we've looked at ordering those pieces, and we also have a portion of the cost covered through a grant. So we probably had about half of the cost of foundations covered through a grant. I believe that was the TIP Foundation, but I could be very wrong on that. So if Mrs. Petty or Mrs. Roll, if I'm wrong, just correct me.
That is
next,
correct.
okay, awesome. Next slide. The next piece is wit and wisdom, and this is the biggest change. This goes K through 8, and it is building language and reading comprehension along with writing and vocabulary. So it's the bulk of our reading instruction. We've built those decoding pieces in K through 2 that I was talking about with phonics and phonemic awareness, but this piece also goes through K2 in building language comprehension. Having kids, I mean, we know how important reading to kids is at home. The big piece is there because they learn so much through those experiences of being read to. They learn about language, they learn about different things in the world, and they build a lot of knowledge. Wit and wisdom, it includes 28 authentic core texts for each student in every grade level. They are not in a basal, so they're not all in one big book. They're the actual books that kids will have in their hands. And there are all kinds of books. They may be, like in one grade, I saw there was an atlas that they look through and they have to try to work through. There's works of art that they look at. There is, in one grade, they're looking at the circulatory system and reading about that. So there's a lot of informational text as well. So it's really trying to get books in our kids' hands and help them build knowledge along with learning how to break down and read, write, and have robust vocabularies. It really pushes the expectations for our students to think more deeply. We went and saw a district that is utilizing this. They started about 3 years ago. Mad River Local Schools just down the road. It's actually where I started my career. And watching the students have discussions in those classrooms was pretty profound. It was a middle school. I don't know if you guys know a lot about middle schoolers, but robust conversation is not synonymous with middle school necessarily all the time. But these kids were talking about, it was Midsummer Night's Dream, and they were talking about the meaning of love. And it was, I mean, it was pretty awesome to watch. So the idea is we want kids to start talking and to start thinking together and then turn that into great writing. And also a big idea here is trying to build knowledge. There's been a lot of research done that the achievement gap is not necessarily a gap, kids who can't do it and kids who can, but instead it's an opportunity gap. It's kids that didn't have all of the same opportunities to learn about the world, to go on vacations, to read tons of books at home. And that gap, we found that schools are not necessarily closing because we're so focused on skills. So Wit and Wisdom does focus on skills, but it also has a nice frame of knowledge all the way through the program that is building our kids' background. So when they walk out, they have a great background of the world, if that makes sense. Trying to explain this quickly is a little difficult, but that's the general idea of Wit and Wisdom. And it is a little outside the box. We have had a training with teachers at the end of the year. Everyone has been trained, including our new staff. And I think there were a lot of questions about how some things would work because it is very different than what we're used to. But at the end of it, I felt like, one, our staff were asking awesome questions, which means they're thinking deeply about their instruction. But two, I feel like people are ready for a change from what we were using with Wonders. So if you go to the next slide, Brendan. The last piece here is geodes. This is a piece that connects foundations to Wit and Wisdom. So let's say I'm in first grade, I'm a student who is learning about these things around the world. And I'm also learning to read through foundations with this phonics program. Geodes are sets of books. There are 6 books in each set, and they connect the topics in Wit and Wisdom to the decoding in Foundations. They're 80% decodable or more, which means we're not just giving kids books based on some random level, but we're instead giving kids books based on what we've taught them. And we're saying, hey, try to read. And I don't know, again, if any of you have had young kids and you have them read a book with sounds they know versus sounds they don't, it is fun to watch them break down the sounds they know because they have experience with that. But when they don't, they get so frustrated. And so the idea here is it's putting it all together for the kids and giving them that reading practice that they need. If you want to go to next slide, Brennan. These are some thoughts, and I don't know if you guys have access to this document. I think you should be able to click on these links. If not, I can send them to you guys. But they are an article Mr. Ferks found about a district in North Carolina that went through this same transition and the growing pains, but also the benefits that came out. And then also an excerpt from a book called The Knowledge Gap. It's an awesome book by Natalie Wexler, and it's just an excerpt from The Knowledge Gap that references Wit and Wisdom and the power of it. I will say that just to summarize that piece, I know in 4th grade there's a unit over the circulatory system, and it's well, it's not over the circulatory system. The question for the unit is what makes a great heart, and the informational part is what actually makes a great heart in your body, like circulatory system and what makes up, what is your heart? And then the figurative part is what makes a great heart as a person. And so they're reading different pieces that go on both sides of this and trying, to learn some of that figurative language and also informational. But there was an excerpt in The Knowledge Gap about a kid in 4th grade. He had struggled all the way through school and he got into this, and the teacher said he was researching the heart and circulatory system all year long. He got so into the topic and he got interested in school. And that changed his whole mindset about school. So what we're hoping to do is have a profound impact on every kid with this and have them connect in some way to this curriculum. Next slide. So I built it all up. The biggest cost of our adoption is Wit and Wisdom. Like I said, Haggerty was really cheap. It's teacher manuals. Foundations, we were able to offset part of the cost, and we already had some of the materials. But Wit and Wisdom, which is K through 8, is a big change. So we have teacher materials that we would have to purchase. That includes teacher manuals and digital. We have student materials, which includes workbooks, which I know you guys have talked about. And also a lot of, it's workbooks for every kid, but also they have added in this summer digital workbooks. You have to have both, but they've added that in because they found a lot of schools have struggled with only paper copies in COVID. It includes 28 core texts for every kid up to 3rd grade, and then 4th and up, it's a class set right now. Part of the reason we're doing it that way is because we don't want to buy a book for every kid in the upper grades and then find out that we didn't need some of the books to send home. So we want to be more intelligent about the way we purchase. And if we have a few books in those grades that we want every kid to have access to, then we would come back to that. And then the PD that goes along with it, and then geodes, which are sets for K through 2. But again, those include something like 760 books in each set of geodes. So the total cost of that is a lot. Now, I will tell you that after working in curriculum and buying books for a long time, there's nothing cheap in curriculum land. But what Wit and Wisdom will do for us, and I've talked a lot to Brennan about this, is if we go 6-year contract versus 1, which just means we're going to use this for 6 years, which we're committing to that anyway, regardless of whether we decide to start off with 1 or 6, we would save $40,000 over the lifetime of the contract. But in addition, they will split the total cost into a per year payment instead of having to pay the upfront cost for the core text and geodes, all the things we're buying right now, and then just paying for workbooks each year. It's interest free. So really it's just splitting that over 6 years. One note is some student fees will pay for portions of those student materials, when you think about offsetting the cost. Also, we will look at, I don't know how much this will amount to, but look at selling previous materials that we are no longer using. And that might be some money that we can recoup. One thing I added in here, but I just got it about 6 o'clock tonight, is the contract for this. So part of this process is signing a 6-year contract. I've shared that with Brennan and Justin. And That would be something you would need to look over. It's a longer document and probably have some discussion about, but I wanted to make sure you had all the details behind it. Because as you read it, it doesn't give you much information about what this is actually doing for our kids. It's just more about the financial pieces. Before I go on, are there any questions about those pieces, those curriculum pieces?
Jay, I had a question with regards to how does this curriculum tie into the middle and the high school's curriculums?
Thank you. So I'm going to go on to the high school, but this actually goes through 8th grade. So it will go all the way up, and that is great consistency up to 8th grade. Actually, previous to this, K through 5 used Wonders, 6 through 8 used their own stuff, which was basically, you know, what the teacher decided to do, which for consistency for our students doesn't always work the best, although our teachers did a ton of work to make that work. In the high school, they've used Prentice Hall books. So what we're looking to do is make Wit and Wisdom consistent K through 8. And then, Brendan, if you want to go to the next slide, it might be on that one. For the high school, we're going to go Engage New York, modified. I put that modified piece on there because Engage New York is an online curriculum because Wit and Wisdom doesn't make one for the high school yet. They're looking at having that very soon. I don't know what soon means, but Engage New York follows the exact same premise. It has very similar style to it. And so it's still trying to build consistency within our high school, although we're modifying it to some degree because we want to make sure it fits the needs of our high school. So the high school teachers are working on looking through that year by year and figuring out what this needs to look like. But that's also helping out conversation about, for instance, what English 9 looks like, what English 10 looks like, what does honors look like? How does that compare to those grade levels? Is it the same thing, but at a higher level, or is it the next year's stuff? So a lot of conversations have been going on at the high school, but that is, Jacob, hopefully that answers your question. The idea is to be consistent K through 12.
Jay, you had said something about having a single classroom set of textbooks. Is that more for our middle school students, whereas our elementary students would all have books, or did I misunderstand that?
Yeah, you're correct. So the elementary K through 3 will have classroom sets, but of course that's a set for every kid because they have self-contained classrooms. In 4 through 8, we're ordering 60 of each, which is 30 per classroom. That'll be enough for every kid to have it while they're in class, but not necessarily take it home with them. We recognize that there are some novels they may need to read that they would want to take home. So we're going to charge the teachers this year to say, like, hey, are there a few books, 7 books that you think you want one for every kid? And then we'll look at purchasing those instead of doing all 28 for every kid all the way up.
And then are all of this curriculum is all online as well, so students can access it at home? Is that correct?
Yeah, so they have actually worked really hard at the end of this year to do it online. They actually have done a lot for coronavirus instruction. They have people from their company that are doing lessons that kids can watch. They've made the workbooks available online. All the teachers' editions are available online. The only issue is the core texts, because if we have 60, for instance, in 8th grade, not every kid could have that at home. But there are a lot of ways you can find some of those things online, and we would have to figure that out if we have to cross that bridge in terms of how we get those texts to kids at home if they need to read them. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure. And my other concern is with students who may have special needs, or that I've heard this from a couple parents. Maybe they have eye issues and they can't do more instruction on computer. Are we making appropriate accommodations for those students to be able to send a book home if we only order 60?
So, and again, hopefully things go well, but hope doesn't always get us where we need to go. So if we face that in the fall, there's going to be lots of conversations. I know in some grades we're going to move ahead with Wit and Wisdom, but there's been conversation that we may not move ahead with the younger grades if they're not in school, because it's awfully hard to start something brand new with kids when they're not there.
Sure.
I don't mean to freak anyone out about that or anything, but the idea is we want to be smart and intelligent about the way we do this. If we find out we're there and we know there are books that are not available online, we would try to find ways for those to go home. The special needs piece is another question that begs a lot of thinking in terms of some kids need larger texts. So one thing I know, you know, I would do with Mr. Cochran is say, hey, where are there kids in different grade levels that need this? And we can look at ordering some of those pieces. But the other piece is, you know, working with those special ed teachers and those kids at home to make sure they have what they need. There are lots of programs that can accommodate on top of these things, if that makes sense.
Jay, this is Julie, kind of along with that thinking. I had a question about how do the students learning English fit in with this?
So that's a great question. And actually that and special needs students have found a lot of success with this, with Wit and Wisdom. Part of the reasoning is, first of all, EL students, one of the biggest lacking areas is background knowledge, is knowledge of the language. And so this builds that. And Mrs. Bailey has been working with Mad River has a big EL population as well. And she's been working with the teachers there and is really excited about what she's heard about their progress that they've made. There are also some components within Wit and Wisdom that are additional supports for EL students. But one premise here is that every kid should have access to core curriculum. So whether it's EL students, whether it's a special ed student, whether it's a gift, every student should have access to the core topics that you're learning. Nobody should necessarily have to leave the classroom when you're learning about the circulatory system or what makes a great heart. Now, as you read on an individual level, there may be some adaptation. You may have an intervention that's helping you learn how to read or decode, but the actual discussions and the topics, any kid can have those conversations. So through that premise and that attitude, they've seen a lot of great progress with those two groups of students. And I would say that is a question that comes up a lot with Wit and Wisdom, but any district I've talked to that has used it has found a lot of success with students who struggle.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jay, this is Jacob again. What would we say to the 9 through 12 English teachers that may not be huge fans of the New York modified program as we go to step forward?
That may not be huge fans of it?
Correct. They don't think that it's exactly in line with the needs of our students, maybe at that level. Is that why you propose a modified version?
Yeah, so instead of saying, hey, here's this thing, especially because we don't have any paper versions of the manuals, and the high school is so difficult because it's not just 4 classes, one for each grade. It includes a lot of different classes. We want to make sure we're flexible in that, whereas K through 8, you have each grade level has kind of a core curriculum that they're working with. But I've tried to work closely with the high school teachers, and I would say that would bear a conversation if there are some things that there's going to be some discomfort with any change or with any adaptation to what we're doing. But I will say that hopefully they found that we're willing to listen and work together if there's any, I don't know, any disagreement or any worries about what we're doing.
Thank you. Excellent answer.
Jay, this is Lida. Can you talk a little bit about how Wit and Wisdom addresses those tier 2 students that aren't necessarily deep special needs, but more your tier 2, just a little bit behind, and then especially the tier 0s, who maybe they're going to be done with their set maybe in February and ready to move on to the next grade? What do we do about those kids?
So I would say for tier 2 and really tier 3 that it's not meant to be a tier 2 program or tier 3. So there are 2 things we're looking at there. One, there are some things we have that we're going to be able to put in place. For instance, if a 3rd grade student is struggling still to decode, we have foundations we can use as an intervention, or we can do more phonemic awareness pieces with some upper grade level students. So we have some pieces, but that's also work we have to get into this year. The idea, we wanted to build a foundation that was strong. And then we need to talk about not just what kind of interventions we have, but also decision rules. So when do we know a kid needs help? Where is that line? And what do we do when we come to that line? Making sure we have consistency in every classroom for tier 2 and 3 students. So that is work we're going to continue to do this year. I'd never heard tier 0. That's an interesting term.
One of my professors in college used it, tier 0 was her term.
I think the big thing here is because the topics are so robust and lend themselves to a lot deeper investigation and research, I would say that would be the opportunity for tier 0 students or students that need to go deeper in terms of, okay, let's say you're working through that, what makes a great heart. There's a lot of deep questions that can go along with that. That's a complex question that even adults could chew on. So I think you can vary what you're looking for from students based on where they're at. And then I know with Quest and stuff, I think that might be an opportunity as well to tie some of these topics into that.
Thank you.
There is one more slide, bonus slide.
Yeah.
And this is iReady, online assessment instruction. So anyone who had students in the elementary, you have some experience with iReady because they allowed us to use their platform for free when we went to online learning the last part of this year. And it worked well. It is not intended to be a curriculum that is used every day and that is the sole curriculum. So hopefully everyone did well with it, but didn't see it as failing because it's not meant to necessarily be the sole teacher of students. It is a great supplement to what we do though. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this because it is an additional piece to what we're doing with language arts. We did an assessment inventory and we checked through all the assessments we were doing and there were a lot of them. We assessed kids quite a bit. And so what we did was try to streamline this. iReady is a tier 1 screener, so it's to screen students and see where they're at. A diagnostic to tell us where kids need support. It also shows its growth at the end of the year, and it has instructional practice built within it that kids can do online, although that is not instruction, that is not the sole bearer of instruction, but it's a supplement. This program, as it stands, would replace NWEA in the elementary, STAR in the elementary, wholesale DRAs. Now that's not to say, anybody who knows anything about DRAs, it's not to say we would never use a DRA, but we would not do them with every kid. It would replace ScoopPad, RAS Kids, and in the middle school, it would, now I'm gonna lose it because I didn't type it out. The program they were using this year online with reading, it will replace. And it streamlines it all to one. And that one does basically everything all of those did. Now, unfortunately, iReady does not go up to the high school. So I know we use USA Test Prep in the high school some, and you know, that's something we'll continue to look at. As we did the quote, I will tell you that I don't like to spend money, whether it's Bethel local schools or my own money. So I tend to go back at the reps as much as I can to save as much as we can. And they had us as different sites, which cost us quite a bit more. So I said, hey, we're all one building. Some little way around that. And so that saved us $12,000 off the top with PD and some of the different supports that are in place. But this hopefully will be close to break even cost wise, taking away all those pieces and then adding in iReady. Of course, we want to be intelligent about the way we do things and try to make sure we're not doing anything that's hurting kids. So as we go through this year, we'll try to watch and see if losing any of these programs creates a hole that that we need to fill, and then we'll come back in with it if we need it. Any questions? Brennan or Justin, I don't know if you wanted to add anything about the contract or how you wanted to go about looking at that.
We'll have them have it on an upcoming agenda for consideration when we also take a look at the high school handbook.
Perfect.
That date will be determined very, very soon.
Okay. Well, if anyone has any questions, feel free to contact me, and thank you guys for listening.
Thank you as well. We appreciate your time, Jay.
Yes, thank you. It was very in-depth. Anything else, Mr. Ferks?
That's a lot longer than my part usually takes. We're good.
It's okay. It was very in-depth and very, very knowledgeable. I appreciate it.
I like the in-depth better than the very much longer than my usual.
Well, and Jay, I'd like to thank you as well. I'm trying to remember, maybe if Miss Petty and Miss Roll can correct me, but we instituted NWEA probably like, I don't know, 8-9 years ago. And that's, I mean, it's a long time to use that testing. And so I'm excited to see all of that kind of, to go to one testing, because it is a lot of assessments for especially our little kids and reading all the time. So I'm excited to see it all go to one program.
Excellent. Thank you, Lori. Any other comments in regards to the curriculum discussion? All right, moving on. Brendan, do we have any comments in regards to hearing of the public in regards to agenda items?
I have not received any.
All right, thank you. Move on to section 7, which is important dates for the district, communications, meeting, and announcements. See, we have today's meetings, next month's Board of Education work session and facility meetings, and our regular board meeting, as well as the August ones listed. August 20th is the new Teachers Induction. Mr. Ferks, could you explain what that is?
That is still being developed. Haven't got there yet. That's essentially an opportunity for our new staff to come on board and do some training as far as they get to know the district at the district level. And then really they spend a lot of time with their building principals, and they have meetings and kind of learn the ins and outs on how each of the buildings operate and kind of what the day looks like and expectations for the school year. And is there anything else I'm missing? So that's kind of what that looks like for new staff, just to kind of induct them to Bethel local schools and what the next year is going to look like for them.
Excellent. Thank you for that description. That helps a lot. Is there anything else that we're missing from the communications?
I beg your pardon?
Are we doing a hog roast this year?
I have not heard about that or got a date yet on it. I'm not sure what I could get a hold of the boosters and see what their plans
It's kind
are.
of one of those things in the middle of the night I woke up and I thought, hog roast. And then so,
Yeah.
it just occurred to me that that would be the time frame that it would be in.
I will follow up with them to kind of see what their plans are. I haven't heard anything.
So I'm guessing the question was possibly the hog roast.
Correct.
Been at the school?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm far at the other end of the table.
All right.
The question was, is the athletic boosters planning on having a hog roast? And if so, we need to add it to the calendar. I've not had any discussion with them, nor have I heard that they are or are not having it. So I will do some follow-ups with a couple of the members to see what their thoughts are.
Thank you, Mr. Ferks. And thank you, Lida, for bringing that up. All right. So moving along, we'll go to section 8, which is treasurer's items requesting board action. Mr. Hattery.
Board tonight have the following items for approval. The minutes for May 5th and May 11th. I know we had 3 other ones. We're working on it. It's been a little learning curve on how to do the minutes in board docs. So hope to have those by the July board meeting. Payment of bills for May. The monthly financial report that was submitted to you. Amended appropriations. Basically, this is the last one for the year. The reason for the increase in general fund was for the technology purchases related to Chromebooks. Usually we don't purchase those until July. We actually received our Chromebooks this past week. So those are good. Also with the new, even also replacing some staff laptops, as well as the high school lab room getting done, or the reasons why for the increase. Permanent improvement is related to the bus purchase through the grant. Since the grant fund is not available yet until next year, I had to encumber to create a purchase order. I had to cover the money to send to the bus company to have the bus. So that's what it is. And then once we get the funds, I'll reallocate the expenditure to that grant fund. Food service is just reduction due to not being in school for the last 9 weeks, 10 weeks. Emergency levy was just a true up of some items, and that was about it. Approval advances, every year we have to do advances, just to mostly related to the federal funds because they cut off there is a correction on this. The first one, it's not supposed to be Idea B fund. That is actually the high school musical fund. So the fund number is right. The name of the fund is wrong. But every year the state closes, be able to do cash drawdowns for the federal grants because they're on the reimbursement. So basically, by state statute, you can't have a negative fund balance at the end of the fiscal year. So all this is doing is we advance money to cover the potential cost. And then once I'm able to make the cash request in July, the money's paid back to the general fund. For the high school musical, we haven't received a reimbursement check related to for the playwrights. We're hoping to receive that next month. So once that's received, we will refund the money back to the general fund. All these will get refunded. It's just, it's by state law, you can't have any negative fund balance in any of your funds at the end of the year. So that's what those are for. Number F is temporary appropriations for next year. By law, we have to have some sort of budget in for next fiscal year by July 1st. Like these are just estimates. We won't do permanent appropriations until the September board meeting. Letter G is establishment of funds. I submitted the fund purpose statement for these two. One was for Power of the Pen. We have an MOU, I think it was done before I got here, of creating that position as a supplemental. I've been asked if we could have a separate fund for that instead of funding it through the middle school principal fund. Also, been asked to separate elementary and middle school vocal activity into two separate funds because currently they are combined as one. So that's the reason for those two proposed funds for tonight. Last one is class fees. Based on the discussions of last board meeting and previous board meeting, these are the proposed school fees for next year. And that is it.
All right, thank you, Brendan. Do we have a motion to place the amended items from the treasurer's report on the consent calendar?
This is Julie. I'll move.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Danny, for the second. Discussion. I pointed out amended items. That was in regards to what Brendan pointed out. The funding code number is correct, but the naming was wrong. So any other discussion? All right, Brendan, could you call the roll, please?
Wait.
Oh, sorry, time out. Go ahead.
The elementary music and middle school is, so you're just kind of changing the name of it.
I'm separating because currently elementary and middle school are combined into one fund. And Ms. Wolford asked us to separate elementary and middle school into two separate funds.
But this is like for plays and musicals and so forth and drama productions. This isn't the.
Yes, this isn't the high school musical.
Yeah, yes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, there's not an elementary. not an elementary drama or a musical. Right. But that will remain, that will just remain there in case there is one someday.
It's vocal activity. It's not musical. I don't,
Oh,
yeah, choir and stuff like that. Yeah.
okay.
And then I just have a question. This is a board docs thing. When I went to look at the minutes, I only saw the May 5th ones because the May 11th ones are listed differently.
They're in there, so you have to click on the link.
Right, so,
Because that's the board docs version.
okay. So
You
how-
don't get a document, you click on the link and it's in there. And you have to
Okay,
scroll
I
through
did
it.
that, but then there's no way, oh, there's a way. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's how they'll be in the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just trying to figure out if we have to have a separate agenda item for each one, or if we can add them all into that first one. We're supposed to, they didn't show us that, so that was one of the questions that we had.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Any other items for discussion? Okay, Brendan, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Ms. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Mansfield?
Yes.
Next up would be do we have a recommendation for a motion to adopt the consent calendar items from the treasurer's report?
I'll move.
And I'll second.
That was Julie and Lori.
Lida.
Sorry, Lida. Thank you, Ms. Mansfield and Ms. Sebastian. Any discussion? All right, Brennan, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Mansfield?
Yes.
Ms. Sebastian?
Yes.
Mr. Elam?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Is there any other information from the treasurer at this time?
I am currently working with Patrick King to move forward in refinancing our current debt. We are shooting for the end of July to make that transaction. The market's getting better. I believe I sent you guys, as of last week, that day, of what the potential present value cash savings was, which I believe was 1.8 million. We're optimistic that that number is going to get better, even better by the time we're able to do the issuance. I tentatively have a call with Moody's about the potential rating on June 18th.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And I think our community will appreciate those savings as well as we move forward with that program.
And
All right.
Brendan, did we want to talk any further about borrowing against the TIF here, or do we want to save that for another meeting?
As in, what do you mean by, I guess, what do you want to talk about?
Well, you had mentioned tonight in the facilities meeting that interest rates looked really good right now, and it might behoove us to create another bond.
Yeah, we can, but like I said, the first step would be to finalize the facility plan. Like, we can't move forward with anything until we know what exactly we're going to do in this phase, because it has to be, that's what has to happen in order for us to do this type of debt.
So do we have to have the finalized master plan, or do we just have to agree
You have to know what we're exactly doing. So if we're doing a new stadium in a K-5, we need to know that for sure. But in reality, you wouldn't do anything until the OFCC approves it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right, yeah, excellent. Thank you, Lori, for those questions, and Brennan for the additional explanation. That makes sense. Next up will be superintendent's items requesting board action. Mr. Firks.
Have several items on the agenda this evening for Board of Education consideration. Letter A has to do with the recommendation for hire of two of our employees who are actually here this evening. Neil Norman, middle school social studies. He will be on the salary schedule bachelor's degree, step 9. Colette Clayton, middle school English/language arts. She has a master's degree, step 10. Those all fit within the parameters set forth by the negotiated agreement. It'll be for school year 2020, 2021. We've also attached in the executive file you received these previously, but it's also their resumes. So you have those. Letter B has to do with approval of summer school teachers. This is a recommendation that was provided from the high school office in regards to summer school instructors from June 8th, 2020 to August 21st, 2020. In discussions with Mr. Swope, he had indicated that a majority of the summer school instruction will actually probably most likely take place in the evenings. You can see the three individuals, Mr. Mark Clute, Mr. Casey Denlinger, Ms. Cindy Gerdeman, that are on the agenda for consideration. Their hourly rate per hour, which is also established by the negotiated agreement. Letter C has to do with approval of summer work as needed. Ms. Marie Lindsay has indicated that she will not be able to work this summer due to some health concerns. So we are removing her from the summer work list. Because it is summer work, there is no need for an official resignation, and replacing her with Mr. Dennis Lawson, who will be assisting with outside type work, mowing, trimming, that kind of stuff. Also received interest from an additional student, Mr. Cole Brannon, who will also be assisting the district. Letter D has to do with supplemental employment. This was mentioned previously in regards to positions that have been hired in regards to summer weight room conditioning. Heather Reitinger had filled that position previously. She had to get her people activity permit updated. I was able to get that taken care of. Well, she was able to get it taken care of on her end. I approved it on my end. She is on the agenda this evening for consideration. Letter E is approval of District Records Commission. So each year, every school district in Ohio has to go through a disposition as far as destruction of records, okay, as required by the auditor of the state. So that is on here for consideration and approval as well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Firks. Next will be a motion to place the items from the superintendent's report to the consent calendar.
Lida, I'll move.
Thank you, Lida, for the motion. Do we have a second?
Julie will second.
Thank you, Julie, for the second. Any discussion? Thank you. Brennan, would you please call the roll, sir?
Ms. Mansfield,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Ms. Sebastian,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Ms. Reel.
Yes.
All right. Moving along in rapid fire session there. Motion to adopt the consent calendar with the items from the superintendent's report.
I'll move.
Thank you, Lori. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Danny, for the second. Any discussion? Brennan, could you call the roll, please, sir?
Ms. Sebastian,
Yes.
Ms. Reel,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Ms. Mansfield.
Yes.
All right. I know it's going to the board report, but I'm used to saying, is there any other items that the superintendent would like to address?
Not this evening. I'm good.
Thank you, sir. All right, next up is board report.
Okay, so a quick summary on the facilities committee meeting that was held directly prior to this meeting. Temporary swing space, Mr. Perks gave an update and handed out a paper with some intermittent dates. So just a couple highlights is July 16th, the units should be delivered here, and by 8/12, they should be installed and with skirting decks and ramps, etc. So right on schedule and possibly ahead. For the facilities master plan, discussion on the storm shelter requirements. They've been delayed for 3 years running and potentially another year. So we may not have to do a storm shelter. For road changes, we talked about possibly what could be done with Ag and Broad Road, or what would need to be done with Ag and Broad Road, given its status as a little country road and not very wide, should traffic dictate it. And so some traffic studies are going to be done upcoming. Short-term classroom space, we talked about the fact that the trailers will cover the next 2 years of students. Third year potentially will be out of space. So we've talked in the past about having a steel structure, about adding classrooms onto the end of the high school on the north end, and then possibly renovating some existing space in the school. And one option that came up again is just for 1 year, possibly putting teachers on carts and not having, and another option would be trailers. But the one option that looks pretty good is maybe putting teachers on carts for just the 1 year, and then we wouldn't have to purchase anything or renovate anything. And one thing that came up in that discussion also was possibly going back to the Medway Church and using those rooms should we need to for 1 year. And Mr. Firks is going to call them just to see if that's an option due to the zoning change that has to occur, should they be interested. And then we had discussion on phase 1 and phase 2 construction. And basically the takeaway from that is that Levin Porter is going to come back to us with some options to show where things could possibly be placed on the property in the next meeting. And also the one thing that they wanted to know was, should we add classrooms for our LFI funding, or should we go down the athletic path? So that there was some good discussion on that, and the recommendation to the board from the facilities committee is to go the athletic route in phase 1. So Jacob, I don't know how it works. I think we need to do we need to do a resolution for that from the board?
I think that'll come when we do the master plan approval. As part of the master plan approval, we would say that phase 1 is associated with a K-5 facility and athletics as LFI. But I think if Brennan or Mr. Firks could advise on the appropriate nature, or do we need to state that tonight?
I would think that the facility would be presenting the facility plan to the board to approve. So that would be in there.
So we can wait. So then the only thing is,
Probably more so for notification to 11 Porter.
yeah,
That you guys will get a finalized facility plan from 11 Porter that will be up for consideration for board approval.
right. So I guess my question is, because the facilities committee is only an advisory committee, does the board want to say, yes, this is the direction we've accepted, and Levin Porter, please proceed with that direction?
Yeah, that's kind of what I said earlier.
Yeah, that's
in
what you
regards
said,
to not knowing how it's set up. Is that what the intent was when you
Right.
guys created it?
Well, yeah, the facilities committee doesn't have any power. It's the
Okay.
board that the committee recommends to, and then the board has the final say. So I don't know, Jacob, what do you think about that?
Okay, so what you're saying is that we would possibly make a motion with regards to is the intent of the board to advise Levin Porter that we agree with the recommendations from the facilities committee that we are moving forward for the master's plan at K-5, and the initial LFIs are associated with the athletic presentations for local funded initiatives. Would that be correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Brendan, I would like to make that motion.
I'll second.
You can give him a second while he writes it down.
Yes.
Thank you.
In the recording. I'm just reminding because that's, I know what it's like to try to write one.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. King.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion from the board? Brennan, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. King,
Yes.
Ms. Sebastian,
Yes.
Ms. Mansfield,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Elam.
Yes.
All right. Hopefully that'll solidify the intent of the board and the recommendation by the facilities committee as we move forward in our facilities project in phase 1 through phase 2. Thank you, Julie, for bringing that forward and the recommendation from the facilities committee. I'd like to thank them for all their work and the time they placed into supporting our school, not only as community members, parents, as well as members of our administration and staff. So thank you all. Is there any other items to brief from the board? Okay, with that being said, let's move to item 12 on the agenda, which would be hearing of the BEA president, Ms. Brewer.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to reiterate what the city said about thanking the PTO for the awesome Olive Garden gift cards. Ironically, they really came in handy for me, but that was very, very nice, and we were very appreciative. I would also like to congratulate the new faculty and staff so far that have been hired this summer. I can't wait to meet all of you. Hopefully, you're a college basketball fan, or we're gonna have some issues. On a other note, during this COVID time, it was time to vote again for BEA officers. We did have a slight change. President is for myself. Vice President is Mrs. Erin Henry, fourth grade teacher. Secretary is Mr. Corey Stackey, physical education, and treasurer is Ms. Laura Wolford. It's a 2-year position, so you guys are stuck with me for another 2 years. Awesome. Anyway, that's really all I have. I hope you guys have a great week.
Thank you, Tracy, and our thoughts are with you as you're going through your additional struggles personally, and as you're bringing your new team on board to support our community and staff. So thank you for that. Next would be hearing of the public. Brennan, do we have any questions with regards from the community?
Got nothing emailed to me. And I have nothing on YouTube.
All right. Next up would be the executive session. Does anybody have any items for executive session?
We need number 1, right?
I believe it's number 1, yes. Does anybody have any other items? Okay, with that, we just have item number 1. Do we, Brennan, could you scroll down for a second? A little bit farther. Do we have a motion to go into executive session for item 1?
This is Julie, I'll move.
Thank you, Julie. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Danny, for the second. Any discussion?
I
Uh,
just-
Go ahead, Julie.
You want to make a statement about the vote, no vote?
My discussion piece would be is that there's no intent to vote on any items and with regards to our discussions in executive session. Any other discussions? Brennan, could you please call the roll, sir?
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Ms. Mansfield,
Yes.
Ms. Sebastian.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. We're going to move into executive session at 8:43 p.m.
Thank you for your time this evening. Appreciate it.